If you've ever felt confused, stuck, or doubting yourself around someone, that confusion wasn't random. Your brain treats repeated promises as patterns, and patterns feel like truth. Once a future is described in detail, your mind starts living there before it exists. You begin reorganizing your choices around a future that only exists in words. And you start tolerating present pain because you're invested in what's supposed to come. But when you ask about the future, the timeline quietly starts to move. The promise doesn't arrive, it gets replaced, just far enough to keep you waiting. That's how hope turns into a loop, waiting disguised as patience. Your brain stays engaged because the reward comes back, just often enough. Unpredictability makes the reward addictive, stronger than consistency ever could. You stop relaxing and start scanning, always waiting for the good version to return. You work harder, behave better, and hope effort will stop the coldness. But the pattern doesn't end. The kindness keeps disappearing and coming back. This is the same mechanism used in gambling. Random rewards keep you pulling the lever. Eventually, the possibility of affection matters more than affection itself. Now the rules change. Every time you meet them, the target moves. Over time, you stop trusting your judgment because success is never defined. You become hypervigilant, constantly trying to predict what will be required next. Eventually, you start believing the failure is you, not the system. That's the point. The system was never meant for you to succeed, only to keep you trying. Sometimes, the system shifts work onto you by pretending it can't function without you. When failure is repeated on purpose, you eventually stop asking and take it all on. They gain freedom by training you to expect nothing from them. One good act becomes permission, used to erase a long list of harm. Your standards drop, because fairness feels violated if you speak up. One apology starts covering 10 insults, and the math keeps getting worse. Then the past gets rewritten. Only the version that benefits them survives. After enough denials, you start questioning events you witnessed yourself. Eventually, arguing reality feels pointless, so their version becomes history. Then urgency is manufactured, so you decide before you can think. When the pressure fades, you realize the deadline was never real. Urgency shuts down reasoning. Your brain switches from logic to survival. When choices feel urgent, options disappear, and that's exactly the point. When you expressed harm, they flip the roles, and suddenly you're the problem. The conversation ends with you comforting them, and your issue disappears. Eventually, you stop bringing things up, because your pain creates consequences. They weaponize your empathy, so accountability never has to exist. When information is withheld, you decide in the dark. and they control the light. You only learn the full truth after it's too late to choose differently. And when you question it, they bury you under explanations until thinking feels impossible. Not because you believe them, but because continuing costs too much. Clarity cuts through noise, and the system can't survive it. You don't break the system by fighting it, only by seeing it clearly. Once clarity holds, the manipulation loses traction. When confusion ends, peace isn't dramatic, it's steady. The pattern doesn't vanish, you just stop feeding it. Awareness doesn't end the pattern, it keeps you outside of it. Once you see the pattern, you don't need distance. You gain boundaries. When confusion stops, different people show up, and everything feels lighter. Progress feels different when no one is pulling the strings. When boundaries become internal, control loses its grip. At that point, protection isn't effort. It's your default state. What comes next isn't repair. It's simply your life moving forward. Awareness doesn't fix the past. It permanently changes what the future allows. Once you recognize the pattern, going back is no longer possible. Not because it's forbidden, but because you finally see the cost. Freedom isn't dramatic. It's the moment you stop paying for confusion. Clarity doesn't rush you. It lets you move at your own speed. Stability comes from choosing clearly, not from standing still. Once stability forms, movement becomes natural, not forced. From here on, decisions come from alignment, not pressure. That's when manipulation ends, not with conflict, but with clarity. If this clarified something for you, subscribe, and we'll examine the next pattern together.